Hello and welcome, Mladen Kovacevic. Last year we presented your film 4 years in 10 minutes at LAlternativa. And you were able to attend, which feels like a precious and unusual privilege right now. And this year you returned to the festival with your latest film, Merry Christmas, Yiwu, which is featured as one of the 10 international films in the main competition. So the two films in your filmography, which I know, are formally very different. 4 years and 10 minutes was an entirely found footage film, and Merry Christmas is an observational documentary. Maybe you can tell me or talk to us a little bit about the paths that led you to China and to making this film, this latest film.
I don't know. I mean, I was working on this film even before I made 4 years in 10 minutes. Not actually working, like shooting and editing, but I was very close to it because I was thinking about making a film in China for a while already, and I was just looking for the right premise for the right story. Since you mentioned 4 years in 10 minutes, it's one of those films that kind of just happened, you know, in between the bigger projects. And I'm not saying it's a bigger film, but you know, some projects are just much more demanding. So while we were planning to go to China, I did 4 years in 10 minutes. And so I was thinking to make a film in China. I was curious to try to show like what I felt is the slice of real contemporary China, and to try to avoid most of the stereotypes that we usually see in documentaries about China. I'm not talking about Chinese documentaries about China, but those made by the outsiders. And so when I heard about Yiwu and its 600 Christmas factories, I knew I wouldn't make a spectacular film. That was not my intention. I was looking to make a film about everyday lives of these workers. But the Christmas itself is it's very potent in a way, dramatically, in dramaturgical way, because Christmas is emotionally very relevant for the Western audiences. It connects very quickly with us. It's the biggest holiday we have in the West. It's the time of the year when these Chinese products, not just the Christmas decorations, is most in demand, and when this demand is most obvious, that's when we buy the most. But what was most important for me for the kind of film that I was trying to make is Christmas is the most important family holiday, and there is this certain sentimentality connected to Christmas, and I felt it would put us in a right frame of mind to observe these factories not just as places of production, but as intimate places. And that is what I was interested in. So the places where parents are worried about their children and trying to motivate them to go back to school, where couples break up, where new romantic affairs are happening, where best friends are talking about their future. This was the kind of film that I was set out to make, and this just felt as a very potent background, the Christmas factories.
Yeah, absolutely. And this idea of avoiding stereotypes for me was really evident also in that there were many things that surprised me. For example, how it's almost artisanal as well, the way they work. I think for some reason, well, I have this idea of, you know, in these modern Chinese cities, even the factories are quite high tech, very automated, and there's, you know, it's all very manual. And I think that this is very well described in your film. And can you tell us a little bit? Were there very many obstacles or restrictions to be able to film this, you know, this calmly and this intimately with the workers in the factory and then back in their eating and living quarters?
Well, other than the personal limits that we had, personal limitation because we were intruding in their lives, that you would have if you shot anywhere else in probably the same manner, there was no other limitations. If you meant official limitations, we were shooting in private factories, in private places we didn't need any permits for that kind of work. And of course, I mean, you face the same thing with every film when you are trying to step into people's lives. It takes time to get to the more intimate details, and you of course first start more from the outside, and then you go inside their lives, and it's a process, but it's not. I never find it too complicating. I think actually when you don't have a personal agenda that you're trying to imprint into your film, but you're genuinely interested in the characters and their own stories, they feel it. And they see where are you pointing your camera at, and very quickly this relationship is established, even in these circumstances where there was no direct communication. I mean, they don't understand me and I don't understand them, but still it's more or less the same. The process is more or less the same.
So it's a matter of, it's interesting though to establish confidence just through observing rather than actually communicating verbally, because obviously I understand that you didn't share a language, and
No.
I understand they in fact there are several languages spoken in the film, though.
That's true. That's true. I mean, the way we worked, I had my translator, who in fact was assistant director throughout the shoot, and she would talk to the characters, and I would talk to her. But you know how it works. I mean, you have your facial expressions, you have your eyes, you can smile. I mean, people can feel that they know you, even if they don't understand what you're saying. And another thing, as you said, most of these characters, they speak in their own dialects. So for them, speaking in Mandarin, which they used when they communicated with my translator, is also a bit like talking in a foreign language. And I actually realized that because I didn't understand them, and very often my crew, which was mostly Chinese, didn't understand them because they would talk in their own dialects, that they felt it was even easier for them to display this kind of intimacy in the dialogue. Because if you just think about it, if you talk to your loved one and you're very close to them and you're talking in a language that nobody around you understands, it's easy to forget that you're actually being recorded. So what would happen? We would have these very long takes because I wasn't sure where to cut. I wasn't sure in real time what was being said. Obviously, when there is like a big shift in a theme, in the topic of the conversation, you would see it in their expressions. But usually I wasn't sure, so I would let these dialogues develop for a long time, which was actually great. I mean, I even learned something from that. You know, it was they would slip into these themes that would work for the film after several minutes of talking about some other stuff. And then after the shot was finished, I would get my translator would translate what was being said. But as I said, often she wouldn't understand either. So they would tell her, and then she would tell me. And so I would say I was working in very broad strokes. I wasn't sure about details of each of these shots, each of these scenes. But that's fine. I mean, that worked for me, I think.
But it's equally a very beautifully composed film. I mean, the position of the camera, the proximity or distance that you establish. Is the cameraman someone that you work with often? I mean, is there a complicity, incredible? What complicity is there between you?
This is the first time we actually made the film together. We did a part of a film which is not finished yet together. In a very strange circumstances. We were in Himalayas a few years ago, and I don't know if you remember or if you followed that. There was this big earthquake that happened in Nepal like 3 years ago, I think, and it happened that we were there during this earthquake. So I would say it was like a bonding experience, and so we're good friends, and it's a beautiful collaboration. And we understand each other perfectly, and I know what shot I want, I know what lens I want, I know what position of the camera, but it's not like I have to communicate it every time. It's very quickly, we just see what is the right shot. And as you said, the shots are kind of fixed at these balanced compositions, because I knew that these shots would have to last a long time. I knew that this wouldn't be like, these shots wouldn't be cut and intercut with some other stuff. So if you want to observe something for more than, you know, a few minutes, it needs to look good.
Yes.
So sometimes people usually think that everything about the film form, about the film style, is only the personal artistic preference of the author, but it's often, it comes from the circumstances. Here we had to find a good position and be patient in this good position of the camera, and not just because I wasn't sure what was being said and I wanted to shoot long shots. To shoot long shots, it is part of my own style of filmmaking, or it was while I was shooting this film. But I didn't want to intrude too much into their lives, at least not with the camera. I didn't want to move around too much, change too many positions. I mean, they're working, it's their working environment. So when we find one good place, one good shot, we would be there. And so most scenes were shot with 1 or 2 shots. And very often during the entire day, we would shoot 6 or 7 shots, and that was it. So that was the approach which worked for me and Marco, the DOP. And I'm also quite satisfied with the way film looks.
And you make little or no distinction, or I didn't notice, between the factory and where they live and eat. Is it because it is the same? Is it the same space, or is this something you wanted to?
They have several factories. I mean, there are different, some bigger ones and some smaller ones, like workshops. But as you said, their living environment and the factories are connected. The dormitories are next to the factories, usually in the same factory yard, and they don't have to live there. Of course, they can rent an apartment nearby, and some characters with families would live in their own apartments. I shot more groups of characters than what you saw in the film. Some just didn't end up in the final version of the film. But the reason why most of them live in these dormitories, it's because they're free. So the accommodation is free, the food is free, so everything they earn they can save, and they're paid quite well, actually. So that's the best way for most of these workers. Even some of the factory owners, like the family with the daughter that talks about her moods and her future education, the girl that is actually thinking when will she finally become rich, they're the owners of the factory, and you can see in their conversation the way they talk about things, that they're the owners of the factory. But the way they operate is until they're absolutely certain that their business is stable and that they made enough money, they will live together with their workers, and which is almost unthinkable in the rest of the world, in exactly the same circumstances, which are not great. I mean, the worst thing about these factories are these dormitories. I mean, these are not great living conditions. Sorry, but they would stay there until absolutely certain they have extra money to buy an apartment, a Maserati, or whatever, because at the end they will be very, very rich. There is the demand for their product is much higher than what they can produce, so they're constantly making money, and even the product in this concrete factory is actually quite expensive. These elaborate wiry sculpture of reindeers and Santa, and so the stuff that you see in the shopping malls, those big things that you usually don't buy for your own apartment, it's made in this factory. So they're making big money, but still they're there with their workers until they are really, really rich, and then they will move out.
Yeah, I mean, that's another of the really interesting aspects of the film, is this sort of familiarity that you feel amongst them, even when they're when you can feel at times there is a hierarchy, but there's a friendliness which I think you capture really well in the film.
But they live together. They spend so much time together,
that explains it.
Yeah, and so they're like two paths to this kind of familiarity that you're describing. They either come from the same village, from the same region to Yiwu, because it's easier like that. As I said, they speak in different dialects, and China is culturally so diverse. So it works for them if they come from the same place. Very often the factory owners as well are from the same village as the most of the workers in some of these factories, at least the smaller factories. And then the rest that would just move around even more, they become very friendly inside of these factories because they live in these dormitories together. So most of the stuff that happens in their lives, business-wise, romantic-wise, their children are playing together, it is happening around these factories. So there is a real intimacy there, and that was the focus of my film, because it felt like that was the focus of their lives. It wasn't really my intention before. I wanted to see what their everyday life is, and their everyday life is this. They're not really concerned about Christmas. I mean, they're making some stuff. They could be working in another factory. It didn't have to be Christmas factory. What they're concerned about is what we are concerned about, what your friend said, and if your girlfriend is going to leave you. I mean, these are the things that we are preoccupied with, especially if you're in position that you work in the factory where the work is usually mentally is not that demanding. You do some simple manual work. So what you constantly do, you're joking around, you're talking around, there's a music playing, there's time for gossip. This is what you do at these places. So this was their life, and that's why this is the film.
Maybe just one last question to sort of conclude
Sure.
this little encounter we've had is, you're an avid traveler. Your filmmaking makes you move around the world a lot. How is the current situation maybe affecting your work, your life, your creativity? Is it put other things into perspective? Just to comment on that.
Actually. When it started, of course, it was a terrible thing that happened, and especially what was happening in Italy and Spain, it really didn't look good. So I wasn't really thinking about, oh my God, I'm not traveling. It would be a weird thing to think about at the moment. But once it settled down, I realized, well, this is okay. I mean, because I also felt that I was wasting time while I was traveling. I mean, you waste days in the airplanes, at the airports, and so I suddenly realized, okay, I have now some extra time to do some real work, and but then that was the first phase. But then soon I realized that I really missed it. And not just traveling, like moving around, but the part that I really wasn't thinking about before was actually that I really miss being at film festivals. At one point, I realized it's a bit too much. So I mostly stopped traveling to festivals. And I went only to places where I really wanted to go. I came to LAlternativa last year, but it was only a few festivals. Usually I wouldn't go because I didn't have time to do it. And now I just feel like this film, like it didn't happen in a way, because really you come to the festivals and you talk to people like we are talking right now. And but it's different. You don't have to watch it with the audience, but you walk in at the end of the film, it's there, and there is some lively conversations. So your own film kind of come back into your life, and without the festivals you don't have that. And very often I would work on few films at the same time, they overlap. So as soon as I premiere the film, I don't think about it anymore. I'm working on another film, but then you go to the festival and you realize it's alive again. It's there. And with this film, I was one festival, and it premiered in Rotterdam, and that was it. And so these conversations are, first I thought, oh my God, we will have so many of these Zoom conversations, but it's the best we got. I mean, so I don't mind this at all.
Yes.
At least some friendly talk about film. So yeah, at the end, it did change a lot of things for everyone, different people, different things, but it did change a lot of things. things. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm going to stop recording and then we say goodbye.
Sure.
Okay.